XCX fan, right?
I am. My girlfriend actually just got me some Charli XCX merch for Christmas. It just showed up. It's like a t-shirt. Yeah.
Nice. Just the t-shirt, or what else did you get merch-wise?
Just the t-shirt from the Charli world. It just says "How I'm Feeling Now" on the front, and then more lyrics on the back. Yeah. I haven't worn it yet, but I will.
Where does "How I'm Feeling Now" kind of rank in the canon of Charli XCX for you?
It's a pretty good one. I don't know. I think it's one of my favorites. I like all of them. I feel like from Vroom Vroom to like Pop 2, I like that little section the most, I think. And then the self-titled, like big, super like polished kind of pop one came out. That one's okay. And then I like this Quarantine one a lot. Yeah, so that's my ranking. And then the one before it, all the ones before Vroom Vroom with like the Fault in Our Stars song and stuff, are like, those are fine. Those aren't my favorite, but yeah.
Did the Black Hole Understands kind of function as a similar statement in your mind in terms of an album similar to How I'm Feeling Now, kind of just summating where you were at that point in quarantine?
Kind of. And it's funny because the lyrics are basically not any different than any other Cloud Nothing's lyrics, depressed in and out of quarantine. But yeah, it's the same idea. You gotta do something. It was a weird period of time where it really felt like just the end or something, so there had to be something to keep your mind off of reality.
Did you have anything pre-prepared going into it, or was it all written fresh?
No, it was all new stuff. Yeah, just me and Jason, our drummer, would just send stuff back and forth pretty constantly because he still lives in Cleveland, so we would just email each other files back and forth. He would play drums and record over my, guitar parts that I had sent him. And eventually we realized, like, well, why don't we just put out an album? Nothing is stopping us from doing that. Yeah, so we did.
Do you need a deadline to finish your record?
I thought I did, but now it turns out I just need to write 1 million songs. Like, well, I don't have anything to do with these. I guess I'll just put them out. Yeah, I used to only think I could need a deadline because otherwise I would just make stuff like eternally and never decide like this is good and this goes out now. I thought I needed that deadline to go into like a studio and make the album and then put that out, but I don't necessarily know that I feel that way anymore. Yeah.
So was The Black Hole Understands the first record that you'd written that didn't have a deadline and was kind of written in that free space?
I guess so. Yeah, technically. None of them have had deadlines necessarily. They've all just been like self-imposed, like, well, we finished touring the last record so we could stop, or I guess we could, record more. Yeah, so the deadline would just be like, I made up that we have to make another record now, just for reasons of, I don't want to stop. Yeah. So I guess that's the sense of the deadline in the past. Yeah.
Yeah. You kind of get into that rhythm of touring, then you make a record, then touring some more, and then you make a record. And it kind of just goes back and forth for a while.
Yeah. That's like the job of it. Yeah. So that kind of just felt like the natural thing to be doing, for us at least.
Does the writing feel different when you kind of remove yourself from that rhythm like COVID has done?
Yeah. Because I feel like before I would kind of play songs and like styles of songs like into the ground on tour, where sorry to people who've seen us at the end of a tour, but like by the end of the tour I'd be like, I hate these songs. And then the next record would be like almost a reaction to those types of songs or something, but these, I'd make them and then I just don't think about them. I haven't I don't know if we're going to play these songs, and we definitely haven't played them yet because I haven't even seen everybody. And who knows when I will. So it's kind of a removal from that process, I guess, just because I don't know where things are going at this point. And I feel like I have been writing in the same like mode for a while, and it's weird to not be tired of it, I guess. Yeah.
That mode that you're in, is that something like a mode you've experienced before, or is this kind of a different new thing?
It's a lot more blatantly melodic. I feel like some of our stuff is like produced in a way that brings maybe noisier elements to the forefront. But this stuff, it's just me plugging a guitar like directly into a computer. So there's not a whole lot I can do with that. If I want it to sound anything like a song, I kind of just keep it pretty clean and straightforward. So that's like, I just keep writing songs that way, and I haven't stopped. I can't really make loud noise where I live, so I have to do it this way. So it's kind of by necessity. Yeah.
Does that impact the energy of the music?
I think so. It's hard to pretend you're like playing in a band when you're just in a room alone. I can't really do that. So I think the stuff is definitely a little less like aggressive. It's not as, I don't know, I'm not like yelling and stuff as much as I was. Just because one, I don't want to do that in a room alone because I don't know. I did it. There's like one song on this thing I just finished where I was like yelling in the basement trying to record my voice, and I think I upset everyone. So I don't want to do that anymore. It's weird to not have the playing with the band. There's just like a natural. You have to turn your amp up loud because the drums are loud and everything, and I have to like sing louder so I can even just hear myself. And not having to do that, I think brings, I guess just melodies and stuff more into the picture.
What are you? So you're in an apartment block, or are you?
Yeah, it's just like Philadelphia has a bunch of row homes, and we're just in like a row home. So there's apartments on either side of us. Yeah.
Would you say is songwriting almost a muscle then? If you're writing a lot at the minute, do you kind of get into the rhythm of it, and once you start exercising it, it becomes easier, and you're just writing every day?
Writing every day as like a practice has become easier. I was doing like a song a day pretty much for a long time. It was interesting just to try to like make a new thing that didn't sound like something I'd already done, like every single day, and find like inspiration somehow to keep doing that. But then I did slow down on that recently because we got this foster dog, and having a dog is at the beginning is like an insane amount of work that I didn't realize. So it's hard to get into like this constant writing mode when like every hour and a half you have to like clean up pee and stuff. Yeah.
Was this the first time you'd had a dog?
It's the first time I've had to take care of the dog, basically. Yeah. I've had dogs growing up, and my girlfriend has a dog that I've seen. The dog lives with her mom now. But I've hung out with the dog, but I haven't really had to do much. This is the first like new dog experience. Yeah.
Was the dog your choice, or was it your girlfriend kind of wanting a dog?
There was, I think the phrase "puppy for Christmas" was brought onto me. Yeah. There is this shelter, the PSPCA. It's like the Philadelphia. It's just an animal shelter up in like Northeast Philly. They had this dog that my girlfriend's friend works there, and she kept saying like, you need to take care of this dog. And it's the cutest dog. Her name's Lavender, and she's a little like pit mix. I don't know what the mix is, but they found her like tied up to a tree in a park.
Oh man.
And she's missing like the bottom, most of her nose basically, and some of her like lips and stuff are missing. I don't know if you call them lips on a dog, whatever you call them. But so she has no nostrils, and her breathing is really like, it sounds nuts. It sounds like a car like backfiring. So yeah, they're trying to like do some kind of reconstructive surgery, and theoretically we're just taking care of her until they can crowdsource enough money to get this surgery done. But I think we're hoping they let us just like adopt her because she's pretty fun to have around.
Yeah, you get attached.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very quickly. And this is like it's like having a Pokemon. This is not like a normal dog. She just makes like weird sounds all the time. It's really funny.
How long ago did you say you got her?
Like a month.
A month ago. Oh, okay, so this is recent.
Yeah, it was puppy for Christmas.
And you moved to Philadelphia a year and a half ago. But
something like that, yeah. I forget the exact time, but yeah.
How come you moved to Philly?
Well, I've been dating my girlfriend for like 5 years. Long distance, more or less, the whole time, and finally I just decided to shorten the distance. I got sick of driving like the 7-8 hours between Cleveland and Philly every couple of weeks or something. Yeah,
I can imagine. It's heavy going.
Yeah, it's annoying.
How have you noticed that kind of impact your creativity being closer together now?
I don't think so necessarily, because I mean, especially back before there was a raging pandemic, I would still go to Cleveland pretty often, and our drummer has like a big house, and I'm able to kind of, stay and hang out there whenever I want. So it was pretty easy to go back and like getting quickly into the flow of just like, let's make music every day and hang out, so that still was normal. I mean, the big impact on creativity is kind of being more or less locked down, and just having to use the computer to do anything.
So was this upcoming record made in Philly? The Shadow I Remember? Was it recorded in Philly?
Well, no, This one got recorded last February before everything went down. So yeah, we recorded this in Chicago with Steve Albini at his studio, Electrical Audio. Yeah, last February in like 6 days. Yeah, yeah, it was a little much. And by the end of it, even Steve, like, we wanted to finish out this very last song, and you could tell he was like, "You guys really needed 7 days." Yeah, I'm like, why are you making me work till like midnight today? I felt pretty bad, but he did it. He's a good guy.
Are you tracking a lot of that live, or are you kind of doing the parts individually?
It's all live except vocals. Once we did all the music, the vocals get added at the end. But all the instrumentation stuff is, I think it's like 100% live. There might be a couple little guitar sounds, and there's piano. Actually, there's piano on almost every song, and that was added afterward too. But the actual like meat and potatoes of the song are live.
How long does it take you then to kind of get into the momentum? Because sometimes I'll speak to bands and they say it takes them a few days when they're in the studio to kind of get into the flow of it, but I imagine you don't have that luxury if you're only in for 6 days.
Yeah, we just kind of have to be in the flow. So I think we just practice a lot before we go to record, if we're doing it in this like live fashion. So you're kind of already like in the flow in a way. And then you get there and, it takes a day to kind of settle in and be like, let's make sure the drums sound good. Let's make, just that first day is just making things sound okay. And maybe you do one song. But once you're in it, you just kind of, you're there to make the record. So it's not like I don't get too distracted. And that studio has there's like a TV, but there's not much to do outside of just sit in the room and be like, let's work on these songs. Yeah. So it's kind of a good place to just focus and get some stuff done. Was
there much time for Scrabble this time around?
No time for Scrabble. Yeah. There's always time to fuck around on a phone or something. Yeah. Especially because, you can't, there's downtime, where nothing is really happening. And, of course you're going to play Scrabble or do whatever during that time. I don't remember any particular electronic fixation this time around during the downtime. I think we just kind of chatted and then we get back to working. And we also, we were able to afford food this time around. So we would talk about what should we get for dinner? Yeah, that was like a fun conversation that we didn't get to have last time we worked with Steve Albini. So yeah, that took up some time.
Are you always speaking about the music in that downtime when you have those conversations, or what sort of chats are you sharing with each other? What are you talking about in the downtime?
Just like stupid stuff. Like nothing. I don't even remember, honestly. Just like boring stories probably about. At this point, we're both people who I've been doing this for, 11 years. He's been doing it for much longer, but we operate in similar, I think, ways and have just similar outlooks on how things should be. So I think we were just chatting about recording, like bands. And I guess it is mostly about music, honestly. Yeah.
Just decompress a little bit in between takes.
Mm-hmm.
This is your second time working with him, right?
Yeah. First one was I think we recorded in 2011, the first one. Yeah.
Almost 10 years ago.
I know.
Had you seen him in the interim?
Nope.
No. Wow.
Yeah, I think our bassist might have emailed him about bass at some point in those 10 years, but that was our only interaction.
When you went back in, was there like a pre-existing relationship to a certain extent? Or
yeah, I think so. It felt like that, at least. It didn't feel weird, It didn't feel like there was any, like we were like meeting someone for the first time again. The studio looked exactly like I remembered it. He looked the same. It was kind of just like, oh, this is the same. That's interesting. Different people working there, maybe. But yeah, for the most part, it really kind of just felt like stepping into a situation we were already familiar with.
Was this the first time you repeated working with a producer?
It is.
How do you feel that familiarity kind of bled into the process then, if you're going back in and it's something that's maybe not been there before?
I think it really helps, especially because we were familiar. The reason we wanted to work with him again is because we liked the process, and liked the way he makes things sound, and just everything was very comfortable there. So being able to immediately like hop back into that, like, oh yes, this is what I remember being good from this last time we recorded with him, even though it was 10 years ago, and you think maybe you're just sort of, only remembering the good parts of something, It turns out that, it's actually like this easy to make a record with this guy, and he really does kind of immediately latch on to how to make your band sound like your band, playing. And that is something that doesn't seem like it should be hard, but I think a lot of people have just different takes on what a band should sound like. And for some reason, he's able to just make it sound like exactly like us playing. That makes you comfortable when you know what you're hearing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about trust, isn't it?
Yeah. And he's a very trustworthy fella.
Had any of his methods changed at all, or was he kind of very much still in the same mindset that he was 10 years ago?
I think it was pretty similar. I don't really remember anything particularly new this time around. I do think I paid more attention probably to the process of like just how he was doing things, just because the first time around it was our first time in the studio. It was our first time working with anyone who was like a popular producer. It kind of just, and I was like, I think I was 19, maybe 19, maybe 20. So that was already like a weird thing to be that age and be like, I guess we'll record with Steve Albini. Okay. So I think I was just a little freaked out back then and wasn't really, paying attention to things. But this time I would like kind of made a point to watch what he did. And that was, yeah, but I think everything was pretty similar.
Do you notice how you've changed more if you're going back into someone that's pretty much still the same, but you've obviously developed as a band in the interim? Do you kind of notice that shift when you're placing yourself back in the same setting again?
Yeah, definitely. And like you notice that, even being in a band on tour, we've played the same room that we played 10 years ago. We'll play it again in a certain city, on our most recent tour or something, and even just being in that room, being like, I remember this, and I remember how this show went last time. You have all these like things and memories that kind of like feed into like coloring the current experience, even if, it ends up being completely different. You can have this certain attitude or something heading into something that might not be justified just because of the way things happened a long time ago. By the end of it, if things go differently the next time, it's, something to see how you might be the thing that has changed rather than the room itself. Yeah.
Did they still have fluffy coffee at the studio as well?
There was fluffy coffee. I can't drink it as much. I would think I was like chugging it last time. And it's like the intern's job to make coffee. And it feels so weird to be like, can you make me a coffee? To like a college kid. I feel it feels bad to me. But it's their job, I guess. So I would have one and maybe drink like half of it and just feel sick because it's so much sugar and stuff. And I kind of stopped like eating that way a while ago. But, you got to have one.
How is it different? What actually is it? How does it compare to normal coffee? What's so special about it?
There's just a lot of like maple syrup in it, and it's just like a latte, like with tons of syrup in it. I think
a lot of sugar,
maybe honey or something too. Yeah, it's just like a bunch of sugary stuff in there. Yeah, it's extremely sweet.
It's funny that we're kind of speaking a little bit about memory in the kind of relationship you have to certain places, whether that be venues or the studio or Steve, and the way that's kind of changed in the last 10 years. Because a lot of the music itself too concerns memory. But when you're translating a memory that you have very clearly pictured in your head, as opposed to translating one that's maybe a little bit more fractured to music, does that process kind of differ quite a lot in feeling?
I guess the music kind of generally has more to do with just like the concept of memory in a way, rather than specific instances of things happening. Because my memory is terrible. So I think if I was trying to write about, what I did today 10 years ago, I don't know what the song would be about. It would just be like John Cage 433. It'd just be silence. Like, I don't know what I did. So yeah, the songs kind of do concern just, I guess more like what I guess I sort of was talking about, just like the idea of how things and places can change, and like two people in the same place can have like a wildly different experience of something, just based on their respective pasts rather than anything going on in like the current moment. Yeah.
Has your concept of memory changed as a result of those experiences and kind of that feeling?
Not exactly. It's just something I've always been like interested. It goes along with like being interested in like history or something in a way to me, just like being able to like be somewhere and think about all the things that have happened in that place leading up to how it is, what it is today, or a person or a place or like anything. Everything has like a long past to it, and it's I think, worthwhile to be aware of that and like acknowledge and examine that past, while being able to also, live in the present.
Is that kind of what the opening song's a bit about? You kind of open on that line, "The world I've known has gone away" on Oslo.
Sorta, yeah. That one's half. It's the only song that I've ever written that is sort of about something else too, where it's like half that, and also there's a movie called Oslo, August 31st, maybe. It's like a date, and the word Oslo is in it, and it's just a movie that I watched, and I was particularly moved by. At the time, I was also writing this song, so the lyrics kind of also play into that. It's like an ex-drug addict who comes out of rehab and just has a hard time adjusting and ends up, spoiler alert, he has a very hard time and he ends up not making it through. But yeah, it was just I just really liked that movie, so that kind of ended up being in the words too.
Is that where a lot of the kind of dark imagery in that song comes from? Yeah,
for the most part, yeah. And the title, I guess.
Does that at all factor into, on this record you're singing, and you always have, you go through a lot of different kind of vocal styles. When you're writing a song that's partially about someone else's experience, does that kind of factor into like the kind of vocal persona of the song and the way in which you sing it and you deliver it?
Yeah, sort of. And I guess just the energy of the song, like that one starts a little, I wanted all the songs on the record to do this, but that one like very obviously does it, where it starts quieter and like builds up to this like loud screaming ending or something. So that like just the way the song itself moves, I feel like kind of dictates how the vocal should go in a way. Just because like if I started off screaming on that one, it would be upsetting. So I think it kind of made sense to start with like the kind of emotionless drony vocal and like let that lead into, things getting a little more emotional and intense throughout.
It's kind of a bright opening though, before the vocals come in, when you've just got the piano and then the guitar kind of comes in. And then it kind of,
it's pretty.
Pull the rug out.
Well, that's like the movie starts that way too. It's like the guy's, he's doing better. Yeah, and like he's seeing his family and everyone's like, "Oh, it's so nice to see you." Yeah. And then things take a turn. Yeah.
When did the piano enter the mix on that track?
Towards the end. I guess I did all the piano stuff at the end, but the one thing I do definitely remember about recording Attack on Memory with Steve a while ago was that I really liked playing the piano at the studio. So there's a lot of piano on that record too. There's just certain little holes in each song that seemed like, oh, piano could go here. I kind of knew I wanted piano, but the actual figuring out the parts and stuff just came while we were in the studio.
Was piano your first instrument?
It was, yeah. I think I took piano lessons for a couple years when I was in like 3rd or 4th grade. I don't know how old a person is at that point. Very young.
And then when you start the lessons, do you kind of carry on playing it yourself? And you kind of start to experiment with it in your own way?
Yeah, I kept playing piano because we just had a piano at the house. So I would keep playing that. But my piano teacher at the time kind of like forced me to quit, basically, because I also wanted to learn how to play saxophone. And she was like, "You can only learn one instrument." And I was like, okay. So I quit. And I also started learning saxophone around that time. And that was like 5th grade. So I guess I was like, I don't know, 11 or 12 is maybe how old I am at that point.
Alto saxophone?
Yeah, I picked up alto sax in the 5th grade, and guitar around then too, actually. So my piano teacher probably inspired me to, because she was a mean person. So I think maybe I just like was inclined to not do anything she said. She had a mean little dog. We'd have to go to her house and like avoid her like shitty little dog. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what she's up to now, but hopefully she's nicer.
Yeah, I used to play the saxophone as well, and I had a pretty mean teacher. But I look back on it now, and I feel like it kind of drove me in a bit of a way, if that makes sense. Like she was good at motivating you.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, sometimes that works. Yeah, my like high school band director was like a pretty mean guy. But we had a good band, so it must have done something. But yeah, my saxophone teacher, the first one I had, was nuts. He was like from another planet. He would just kind of like look off into space while you played, and then like you would finish the thing that you had practiced, for the lesson. And he would just sort of look at you and go like, bah. He would just like make a weird sound or something. And you'd be like, huh, I wonder what that means. Yeah, it was like, he was very hard to talk to, and like, I guess somehow I learned something, but I don't really remember how, because I remember him just making weird sounds and like my parents being kind of weirded out by him.
How old was he?
I would guess he was 30s, 40s at that point. Yeah.
When do you kind of move away from learning instruments into writing your own stuff and using music as an expression in a much more personal way?
I think that was more like high school. I got this little Tascam Porta-Studio like recorder thing, and I think it had like 4 or 8 tracks, I forget, but it was just a little digital like blue box. And I would just start trying to make stuff on there with, I think, guitar mostly. I don't think I really have any of that stuff anymore, but that was around when I decided like, oh, this is something I'm good at. Yeah, because I wanted to, originally in my life, I had wanted to like become a saxophone player. That was like my goal. I don't know what that even means, you know? And like looking back on it, I was like, what did I want to do? And like, I don't think that's a anything anybody can really do, unless you're extremely lucky. And I don't think I was good enough at saxophone in retrospect to even be trying to do something like that. Like I was pretty good, but I wasn't amazing. And I think I was pretty good at guitar, but I wasn't, I was pretty good at a lot of instruments. And I think that kind of naturally leads to writing songs versus trying to be like some virtuoso at one thing, just because you can use that pretty good ability to make like a very good song just because you kind of know how to do a bunch of things. So songwriting becomes the focus at that point, I guess.
What were you thinking of when you were speaking about being a saxophone player? Were you thinking like touring musician, or? I mean, that kind of happened. You became a touring musician in a different way.
Yeah, definitely. And I remember I went to college for like 3 months for saxophone, and I took lessons with a guy there. Banizak, I think was his last name. And he was like a very talented saxophone player, and I was kind of into like more out there types of music, just like weird classical stuff and like the free jazz, and he was like super into that too, so he was excited to have a student into that. And then the band started to gain like traction online, and he was like, oh, let me hear your stuff. And I was like, I don't know if you'll like this. Yeah, but I'll send it to you. And then I don't think I ever heard anything. But yeah, I guess I must have wanted to, I think in my head I was like, I'm going to be a jazz saxophone player. Who can do that? Yeah, I don't know who can really make a living doing that. I would have had to remain in that like academic world, I think, if I wanted to keep things jazzy.
That's a weird contrast. In order to keep things jazzy, you have to be in an academic world. I guess jazz is very technical, but we do kind of think of it as this free thing to a certain extent.
Yeah, but I mean, it's either, I guess I could be a jazz saxophonist and like work any other form of work, to actually like earn a living and, make money. But I feel like a lot of people end up, they're professors or teachers or something at like a school, and they also, have this body of work that they create, and that, also serves their teaching. Yeah.
When did you start making freeform jazz records, like the ones you kind of put out last year?
I've been kind of playing here and there on stuff with people around Cleveland for the last like 2, maybe 3 years. There's a lot of, or not there's a lot, but there's a small scene of people in Cleveland who are really focused and like into like improvised music. And so I played a lot with Jason, our drummer. We're friends with a lot of those people in Cleveland. And so we ended up having a little like almost like free jazz trio called Iceberg with this guy, John Kalaji, who makes music as High Orid. And we got into like he was kind of in the actual like jazz scene in Cleveland. So he ended up opening for like some really, really good actual like jazz musicians who came through and played at like the Bop Stop. That's Cleveland's jazz venue. So we would do that. And then from there, yeah, we just kept playing with other people. We made some music with this guy, Bob Drake, who's like a homemade synth wizard from Cleveland. He's incredible. I don't really know how he does what he does, but he just builds these machines that kind of like just make awesome sounds. Really good drummer named Jay Guy. He moved to Indonesia for a while to learn like gamelan for a year, and then came back, and he's like an even better drummer now. So we did some stuff with him. But yeah, that's just like a hobby, I guess.
How do you stop yourself slipping into patterns when you're improvising?
You just have to listen to what other people are doing, I guess, and try to, if someone starts doing something interesting, you start just playing off of them, or like just listening to them for a second and just like not playing. And that way, you have some time to think, I guess, and also that's the fun of being in a band, even like a regular band, just playing songs. Even if I write all the parts and like disseminate them amongst the band members and say like play these parts, there will be times where things accidentally change, and that change, if you're like listening to it, you'll be like, oh, that's actually like a better direction to take this song in, or like a better part that happened there, and yeah, listening is, I guess, an important part of my musical process.
How much did this record that you just put out with Cloud Nothing, or the record, sorry, that's coming out with Cloud Nothing, change when you kind of took it into that live space and took it into the room?
Some of the songs changed pretty drastically, actually. There was The Spirit Of had a totally different ending to it. Like the first little chunk was essentially the same, and then there's just like a big ending to that song. And that wasn't really there in my original draft of it, but I had made a part in the song and I was teaching everyone, and we were kind of just playing this one part over and over, and that part just sounded better to play over and over than what I had intended to come as the next part. So I kind of like rewrote the song from there, and that changed. What else? I mean, every song has little parts that were not in like my demos or something. Yeah.
With The Spirit Of, did it get simpler when it changed in the live room?
It did, actually. Yeah, like the end part. I don't know how to describe these parts of the songs. I guess it's just like there's just like a long, loud ending part.
So the climax of the song.
The climax, yeah. That had been a little more complicated and like knotty, but kind of playing it in the room did simplify it a lot. And now it's just kind of like the same part repeated over and over with different dynamics rather than like changing the actual part each time.
It's like a mantra.
Yeah.
Do simple ideas carry greater resonance, do you think?
I think so. And I think that's something I'm trying to honestly do more of, is I feel like I did get away from that for a little while, just trying to make the songs were getting just like complicated. There was just like a lot going on in all these songs, and there was just like almost too much to listen to. And I like that to an extent, when it's like focused.
The first record.
Sorry?
It's kind of quite shoegazy in that way, where everything's kind of on top of each other.
Oh, whoa, yeah. Well, that was way back in the day. Yeah, I don't know what I was doing at that point. I think I was just trying to learn how to write songs. So I was just throwing everything in there that I could. When I feel like a song is like the most successful version of itself is when I've kind of like boiled it down to like very basic elements. That the elements themselves are still like interesting, but they're almost just like primary colors in a way, where like you're just hearing like these very simple things and they just happen to work together in like a really nice interlocking way, that if you had added some other colors, it might have just made like a muddy, terrible painting. But since you only have these three things, like it just is like a really satisfying piece of work. Yeah.
Do you find that when you're kind of working on songs, you tend to take more stuff out than you add in as it progresses?
Yes, yeah, because I'll make a guitar part that is just like insane, and I'll just like practice it over and over until I can play this like really difficult guitar part, and then I'll take just like the chords from that part, like the most basic like power chord, just like two notes, and that'll be my guitar part for the song, and then I'll take like the kind of complicated like noodly stuff I was doing on top of it, and that'll be the other guitar part for the song. So just separating those two things, and even just in headphones, like separating those two things into different stereo like channels, like one's on the left and one's on the right, it makes the song immediately more listenable, and like easy to follow along with, rather than having one guitar just like doing all this stuff, which is cool. But in the context of like a greater song, it helps to like split up these different elements into different frequencies and different channels, I guess. Yeah.
Is like decluttering the mix in that way that you're speaking about there, is that almost like a natural part of the maturing as a songwriter, the maturing process? I
think so, yeah, because there was a record we did where we were kind of forced into being a 3-piece for this album Here and Nowhere Else, so I had to like play guitar like that. And I think the record following it, we brought on another guitarist again, so there were 4 people in the band again, but I still had my mind on this like, I gotta play this complicated part that has several melodies within like one guitar part, like I'm playing like 2 or 3 things at once, and that wasn't necessary. I don't think. So I spent a couple records, honestly, probably trying to like pare that down back to basics in a way. And I feel like that's like always the goal now for me is like I'll write something and be like, this is good, but there's a little too much going on, and I'll try to simplify it. And it's funny because I live with my girlfriend and she also makes music. Her name's Sadie. She does like Sad 13 and Speedy Ortiz. She makes things complicated and likes it that way. So whenever I'm like upstairs and I'm like, I've changed the song to being like, it's just 2 chords, she'll be like, what? Yeah, like, how is that a song? Yeah. So I'm the polar opposite of her in that way. Yeah.
Does the jazz stuff you do tend to be more complicated?
That stuff is, who knows what any of that stuff is like.
Is it almost scratching the complicated itch?
Possibly, yeah. It's scratching like there's like a improv itch that I get every once in a while where even just listening to music, like I don't want to listen to stuff like that all the time. But there are moments where it makes sense to me to listen to 4 people just like playing, nonsense in a room together. It makes sense at that time. And sometimes I want to do that. And I used to kind of throw that more into Cloud Nothing songs, where there would be long periods of it was planned out to an extent, but there were elements of just like, let's just see how this goes, and having that in like a 10-minute song or something, and 6 or 7 minutes of it is just this noise experiment on top of a pop song for whatever reason. But I kind of started paring that down. So that's like almost just part of the songs now. So it's happening simultaneously with the song rather than having just like, and stop the song, here's a noise part, song comes back. I kind of got sick of that format. So when I'm in the mood for that stuff, I think it does help to have this little improv outlet. Yeah.
Why did you get tired of that format?
I think to keep it interesting, we would have to keep changing who was in the band. There's certain rhythms and things we can lock into throughout the course of a tour, especially where the noisy part of a song will almost be written in a way. Like we'll have done it so many times that like we'll be like, oh, this is how it goes now. Like it sounds crazy, but we like it follows a structure to us in a way where like it's not changing every night anymore. To make those interesting, we would have to be like, all right, I'm not playing guitar on this song. Like, here's our friend's going to play on this one. It'd have to like essentially change the band in a way that I don't think I want to do with this band to keep those parts fresh and rather than just like repeating themselves over and over. So I kind of just started making the songs shorter.
Yeah. In order to keep it fresh, you change the actual structure of the songs instead of changing the components that go into it.
Yeah, because like I know how we all play, and I mean, not that we're only capable of like certain things, but there's just ways that we play together that are kind of just natural, and to be able to go outside of that box is difficult and maybe wouldn't be as good in a way as the things that we've kind of learned how to do over time. So yeah, I feel like that stuff is sort of like set in stone. And rather than trying to do something, bad, we might as well just, keep things shorter.
The final song on the record, The Room It Was, as well. Was that written about you going back into the same studio you've been in the first time?
Not quite so literally, but yeah, it's the same idea, same concept as basically the whole record in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, this idea about revisiting the past, but kind of in a different way to what you've done before. Do you think there's more hope in this record than on previous ones?
I think so, yeah. Or I mean, I hope so. Honestly, it would be. I don't know if I'm setting an example for anyone, but I don't think I am. But I wouldn't want to be the person who is just sad their whole life and just writes these mopey songs. I think there is an element of comfort in these songs and maybe a little more like warmth to the music itself, and also just like the messaging behind it all, where it's less like everything is bad and more like even if everything is bad, you can find these little pockets of something hopeful and something to look forward to within those within the nightmare. Yeah.
When do you kind of first get that clarity where you notice the record is going in a slightly more hopeful direction? You can kind of see it as a whole thematically in that way.
When it's done, and I like go listen to it, I'm like, oh, that must be why all these songs like came around at the same time and all have like similar themes or something, that just must be what I was feeling. Yeah. Cause I'm pretty bad at like day to day thinking about my life. I try to just like keep busy so I don't have to do that. Yeah. Once I make the record, it's nice for me to actually go back and have this document of a thing that I was almost unconsciously or subconsciously making to represent what I was feeling or thinking about at any given time, and to go back and look at it and be like, I guess I was happier when I was making this record. Yeah, it's more of just like once I made the thing, that's when I can look at it and say like, that's what it is. Yeah, during the process, it's just a mess. I'm not sure what's going on.
Does that then kind of go on to inform what you write afterwards? Does each record like serve as a stepping stone from one to the next, or is it a completely fresh slate each time?
I think just by virtue of me having made all these things, they do kind of lead almost like a long story or whatever to whatever the most recent record is generally a good example of like probably what I am thinking about currently or like what's on my mind at the time, or just like the music I like at any given time. Yeah, it's they're all pretty representative of, I guess, my reality at whatever time they came out.
The Room it was as well, they were saying it kind of is indicative of the record being slightly more hopeful in some ways. It does still kind of maintain that existential edge that we've kind of seen as a through line in a lot of your songwriting. You were saying a little bit earlier that you sometimes struggle with the day to day. Is it kind of because of that? Can you switch that existential thing off, or is it kind of just running all the time?
It's just running all the time, because like how can it not be? It's impossible to go through life and just be like, yay, yeah, I'm alive. It's like, wait, but why? Yeah, what am I doing? That's more what I think of. Maybe there's people who are just loving every minute, and more power to them. But I am mired in my own brain for the most part, so it's hard for me to get out of there. And just there's times obviously where I am enjoying things, but it's not a constant state. And I'm always like having trouble just, seeing something for what it is. I have to like think of all these other, views and things that I could think about anything. It's hard for me to just focus on one thing at a time. So yeah, that is a through line that I don't know if it'll be around my whole life, but we'll see.
Do you think it's partly what fuels you to make music as well, though?
I think so, yeah, because there's not much else I can do to ask these questions. I'm not a great just like writer of the words or something, and I don't have the way I would want to express these things is artistically, I guess. And making these songs and things is a good way for me to do that. So rather than just hold on to these dark thoughts and just, not talk about them or do anything with them, it does help to kind of put them out in the world. And, you see that like, oh, lots of people like think about these things and, feel this way. And obviously I've known that for a while now. When you're like a little kid, you think like you're the only one. But every time you put out a record, people relate to it in a way. And it's not nice that people feel that way, but it's nice to know that there's a community of people who can, find comfort in knowing that they're not the only people feeling that way.
At what age did you kind of first start to notice your mind move in that direction, shifting from childhood innocence, for lack of a better word, to kind of pondering the bigger questions?
I don't remember not doing that. As far as I remember back, I was always kind of just thinking about things in the greater scheme. Yeah, rather, it was always weird to me that people weren't able to do that. So I was always kind of attracted to, or just like I was into hanging out with people who were older than me. And I always wanted to be accepted by people who were older than me in a way, just because I felt like they had a better understanding or something of like, where my mind was at the time as a little kid. So I would always be, even in high school, I found like a grouping of musicians in Cleveland who were, significantly older than me, like 10 years older than me or something at the time, which felt significant at the time, I guess I should say.
It's a big gap at that point, yeah.
Yeah, and that's who I was hanging out with, after school. These people who played in like local bands, and they were just, people from Cleveland. But it felt to me like they were like these people who had like they'd figure things out, and they were, on my wavelength at the time, which is very funny because they probably looked at me and they were like, who is this kid? But that's how I met TJ, who plays in the band. So good things came from it.
Is he 10 years older than you?
Just about. I think he's maybe 8 years older than me. 8 or 9.
Interesting. Do you recall your first impression of him?
I don't really know the very first time I met him, because I think the whole reason I ended up meeting these people is because I played in a battle of the bands in high school with like a band I was in. It was just me and this drummer, Perry, and our band was called Ponyta, like the Pokemon. And we played this like battle of the bands where every other band was just like Creed garbage, and we were trying to sound like No Age, I think, and who knows what we actually sounded like. I have no idea. But one of these people, this guy Eric Schulte, was like judging the battle of the bands, and I guess he really liked Ponyta, and he was like best friends with TJ at the time, so he must have introduced me to TJ, and TJ's just a nice guy. So I probably just thought he was a nice guy. Yeah.
How does Sound of Alarm kind of tie into what we've just been speaking about in terms of the more existential side to the lyricism, and this kind of realization you have in it of that you need to make time for yourself? What does that kind of come out of, and is it linked into the kind of broader questions you're asking?
I think so, yeah, because I guess that one is also kind of about feeling like there's like lines in there about feeling like you're a liar or something like that. Don't even remember the exact words, honestly. Yeah, that whole thing kind of just ties into like, if you don't actually just take time to slow down and just kind of like, see things as they are, and not, get stuck in your, repetitive thought cycle. Like you can just like stop and like take a walk, and like look at a tree and be like, nice tree. Yeah. Rather than think like, how did that tree get here? Oh no. You don't want to go down that road. So yeah, some of the songs on the record are also about that, just being able to like kind of take the edge off for a second and just be able to stop and feel something nice, take time for me, as it were.
Kind of foretells the pandemic in a weird way.
That was the other thing I wanted to do. Yeah, I wanted to foretell the pandemic. Yeah, I knew it was coming. I knew. I saw the news. I saw Wuhan. I was ready. I bought a can of beans.
I mean, you say that, but when you listen to the record in the context of what's happened over the last year, a lot of it does kind of line up in a weird way. Even that, we're speaking about Oslo earlier, the world I've known has gone away. There's a lot of stuff you can kind of pluck out and apply to what's happened recently. It's weird that it's coming out at this time.
It is, but something else I've noticed in the last, I guess, almost whole year at this point, there's pandemic stuff in a lot of things, like things you wouldn't even think about, like just like, like family sitcoms and stuff. There'll be like a line where they'll just be like talking about a pandemic suddenly, and you'll be like, what? Like I never would have noticed this or thought about this before, but I think it's a human fixation to like, for some reason, pandemics were something people actually thought about and talked about a lot, but nobody realized it until like, oh, this one's happening. And it has been funny, or not, funny, but it's been interesting to notice how much old stuff there is that like mentions these things, or like books that were about. I read a book right before all this called, what's it called? Is it called Intolerance? I'm going to look this book up actually, because it was really good and I want to.
When was this book written?
I think it was 2019. It has a pink cover. I have it downstairs. There is a pandemic that people turn into essentially like a zombie sort of creature that isn't dangerous, it doesn't seem like, but they just sort of like stop the functioning, and they just like do like one repetitive task over and over, and you have to kill them basically, or else they can turn you into that.
It's like zombie deer disease.
Yeah.
When it's wasting away the brain, and you kind of just see the zombie deers.
Oh, I know what you're talking about too. I don't know. Too much pandemic stuff.
Chronic wasting disease.
Chronic wasting disease. Nice. Severance. Severance is the name of the book.
We got them both there.
Yeah. Severance by Ling Ma. Good book. Pandemic though. 2018 it came out. Okay. But yeah, it describes a pandemic, and it's funny because it's just like this girl works in like an office in New York, and every day like there'll be more like out of office messages being like, I'm not at work, I have to stay home, or like, the person is obviously has turned into like the zombie creature, and it is similar to how things played out here. So it's just funny that I would have read it like literally right before this started, and then kept seeing through lines and other stuff. But anyway, I don't know what we're talking about.
Do you notice that when you look back at your work as well? Will you kind of see through lines with the albums kind of almost speaking to each other and linking up in weird ways?
Sort of, yeah. Because I think I've always had some sort of negative view of the world. And those different views do kind of interact on the records. It's not the most like positive thing. Definitely things that run through every record. Yeah.
I think nihilist bedroom pop was one of the phrases I saw got mentioned when you first came out.
That is, yeah, I would say that still holds true, minus the bedroom. At this point, actually, yes, we're back to bedroom pop. So, yeah.
Would you say you're still a nihilist?
No, I don't think I was ever a nihilist, but I like that phrase in that way. Yeah, nihilist bedroom pop is just a funny genre.
Yeah, it sounds like something at a Family Guy almost.
Yeah.
I mean, when it comes to looking back on those earlier records, because you're re-releasing, or you're putting out a 10th anniversary edition of the self-titled one, right? Soon.
Oh, of Turning On, yeah.
Okay, so the first record, not the self-titled.
No, the self-titled still is what it is. Yeah, but we're reissuing Turning On, I think at the end of this month.
Nice. Are you doing a vinyl release and stuff for that?
Yeah, we're just doing like a limited vinyl. It's going to look exactly like, there was a CD version. That was the original version of this. So it's like a little CDR that came in like a little handmade, paper thing. So we recreated that for the vinyl version. So it's like a pasted on looking cover that looks just like the old CDR one. And it's, I can't remember if we added extra stuff to it. I think there's some extra songs on there, a couple little like live things and stuff that weren't on the original one. Yeah.
I mean, when that record came out in the kind of shape of the music industry, were people still buying records at that point and kind of CDs and digital downloads? Had streaming really come in or begun?
I don't think streaming was a big thing at all, or at least I wasn't doing it. But yeah, this was just like a pretty small kind of tape label called Bridgetown Records in California somewhere. This guy Kevin Greenspan ran it, and he just like found me on MySpace and was like, "Hey, I'll put out a tape for you if you have like 8 songs." It's like, okay. So I made 8 songs real quick and sent them to him, and that was it. Yeah.
What's the BandCamp? You've kind of got a BandCamp record club now, right? That you're running too.
There's a massive amount of things available to fans of the band on BandCamp. Yeah, we have an insane amount of stuff up there. We have every month we put out an EP now. We were doing things where like if you pre-ordered certain records, you're getting like a CD that one of us like burned that has like old, songs you'll never find anywhere. Little Cloud Nothings demos and like rare one-off songs and stuff. Oh, there's 2 full records at this point that have come out for people who like subscribe to the BandCamp. There's lots of stuff up there. We have like 30 live albums that we put up in April. So there's a lot of stuff up there.
It's almost like Netflix, but for Cloud Nothings.
Yep. Yeah. And I think Netflix is getting pretty bad. I think we're a better subscription service at this point.
You've got more stuff that's worth checking out.
I think so. Yeah. Do you really need to watch Bridgerton? I don't think you need to watch Bridgerton. You need to get our EP. Yeah, right now.
Do you think quality, the whole kind of quality quantity argument is a bit of a myth then? Do you think people kind of just have different output rates if you're able to now put out, an EP a month?
I think I write the types of songs that, for me at least, I can do it in a day and make a thing I'm pretty happy with, and I think there's some people who write stuff that they can write something in a day, and it probably is good, but for them to really be comfortable with it, they have to take that extra time, and that's, I think that just is how it is for some people, and that's totally fine, and honestly, if I were to write every day for a year or something, I could look back at it and be like, these are like the best songs. These are the songs that aren't quite as good. These are, there's going to be layers of quality to the work no matter what, because you can't make the best thing ever every day. Yeah, even just like this thing, like the EPs we put out they're good and I'm happy with them. But, I think in a normal world where I wasn't kind of forced into doing this, if I wanted to keep the band going, I think I would be taking a little more time.
Yeah.
But, we're able to keep the quality up. Working at this pace still.
Do you feel like you're lucky that you're able to work that way, given the current climate and the way that we seem to listen to and consume music?
Yeah, I almost feel like you have to, especially for us who have like chosen to kind of make this band our jobs essentially for the last 10 or so years. If we want to keep doing that, with touring totally off the table, that was where we made money. That was the only way we could have afforded to make this our job. And when you eliminate that, the only thing you can do is just make music and hope people are willing to, spend some amount of money on it, and that'll be that. Yeah.